a number of people, including myself, are obsessed with trying to find what is the optimal thing to listen to, perhaps it's nothing, in order to be able to focus. And the data, as I see them, are basically pointing to silence is best. And so I have a question about silence and the voice in our head. I have a question about that. But also, it's very clear based on what we've discussed up until now that certain frequencies of sound actually play a role in our emotion and cognition. I will sometimes listen to white noise. There are a number of companies now that put out free content of, it's not necessarily binaural beats, but different frequencies that oscillate. Could be totally placebo, but I don't think so because they reference a number of studies. It looks like you can get some cognitive enhancement or focus enhancement. And I use these. There's some great, study with me channels online where you sit there and you work while they work. What are your thoughts on the use of sound as a way to change brain state?
Okay, so I want to back up on this question because I think you're asking a pretty deep question. One might wonder, why would that matter? Like, what is actually going on in our brain that kind of pairing would have an effect, regardless of what might turn out to be sort of the best option? And so one theory that I like to think about a lot is a theory of thought and what is actually going on in our brains when we think. And this theory is that what goes on in our brains when we think might be that we're running simulations related to the thought using that sensory motor infrastructure of the brain.
Could you elaborate?
So the theory is that, like, maybe when you think about a cat, for example, or you think the concept of a cat, that the mental instantiation of that, or the brain mechanism instantiation of having that thought, is to run a little simulation in visual cortex that kind of includes what a cat looks like. A simulation in auditory cortex that what does a cat sound like? And as I'm telling you this, I've used the word cat. What color cat are you thinking?
I'm thinking of a gray cat, but I keep smelling kitty litter.
Okay.
Because my sister had cats, and it drove me. The smell of kitty litter is just so aversive to me.
Right? And so you had no hesitation in telling me the color and adding an additional sensory quality. So that's it's a bit of a just so story, but I think that it's a plausible possibility that that's in fact what's happening when we think. And, some of what tangentially supports this is that we have many more sensory areas of the brain than monkeys do, than more distant mammalian relatives do, as if what might have happened to allow us to become so smart is to make extra copies of some of these sensory areas of the brain. And then when you have an extra copy, you're no longer so constrained, right? We don't really see or hear any better than monkeys do. So what's this extra tissue doing for us? The possibility is that we're using it to generate these simulations, and that running these simulations is kind of what thought is.
Interesting. Is it helpful? Is it adaptive?
Well, it might just be the only game in town. It provides an explanation for why you might, be driving on the freeway and having to merge into difficult traffic and telling your passenger, okay, be quiet, I gotta pay attention now. Like, why would speech impair you from visual motor if it wasn't all part of a kind of cognitive system that's in operation? And maybe you need to shift some resources away from processing the conversation and towards some, actually dealing with the here and now sensory motor task.
I like this a lot, and I want to continue down this thread because we've never talked about what thought is on this podcast.
Yeah.
And I've wondered, like, why is it that so many of our thoughts are incomplete sentences? They're so fractured. And if you really just track your thoughts for a moment, you realize they jump around, even if they're around some coherent framework or subject.
It's predictable. Like, you can see the train of thought sometimes. Like, they rarely jump completely in some totally new...
Sorry, I'm laughing. For some people, they really do.
Do they really?
They do.
Okay.
They do, sort of like the liminal state between awake and sleep. I like to lie there right as I'm waking up.
And things just
and try and stay on a thought
Yeah.
thread. And then I'll just chuckle to myself like 30 seconds later. It's someplace
Gone
completely
somewhere.
because in that liminal state, you're still in a pseudo dream
Yeah.
state.
One time in my class, one of my undergraduate classes, I asked people to try to, without thinking too much, come up with a word that was totally and completely unrelated to anything that we had just been talking about.
Ooh.
I'm going to give you a moment, but not too long. Okay.
It's really tough.
Isn't it hard?
The first word that leapt to mind was cacophony. And it's like, no, that's directly in the framework of
It
what
is,
we're talking
right?
about. I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
And I looked at the paneling on the wall and I thought
it's
maybe
like-
it's something about, and like now I could do it. Like I'd say like lacquer or something like
Right.
that.
But again, it's
You
going
know,
to be related.
Yeah,
Right?
it's really, really tough.
And you know, these are kids that probably have a 30,000 word vocabulary, right? That's a typical
And
size
young
vocabulary.
brains, so-
Young brains, and I
Yeah.
had like 15 students in the class.
Interesting.
I think 2 of them came up with the word elephant, and 3 of them came up with the word banana. You know, like they were clearly not random words.
So I think we're talking about something extremely important now that I'd like your thoughts on, because
Okay.
this is really about how the brain works.
Yes.
Right. And I love the auditory system and we'll get back to it, but it's part of this larger question of how our brains work.
Yeah.
I'm asking about binaural beats or white noise or pink noise or brown noise in order to enhance focus. There's a lot of
Right.
interest in that.
Right.
But what we're really talking about is what our thoughts, how we think,
Right.
and how to anchor our thinking and align it with action.
One reason why I haven't specifically answered your question yet is because I think the answer may be specific to the individual. So for me, for music, I like to listen to music while I work, but I do it sometimes, but not other times. But as a musician myself, the music can't be too interesting to me. Like it has to be either stuff I know really well already, so that it's not like grabbing my attention to actually listen to the song, or it should be classical music or something that doesn't have lyrics, so I don't have that language intrusion to my thoughts. Sometimes I find it useful to make a playlist for a particular project so that those songs start to become a cue for working on that project. So I don't think there's going to be one answer that fits all circumstances, but to maybe have that understanding of what works for the particular person, the particular project,